Beloved child, pause here for a moment, because what you are about to hear was meant to find you at a time when your heart may be more ready than you realize. Do not rush past these words as if they are just another message appearing in front of you. Something has been stirring beneath the surface, quietly, patiently, almost invisibly, and tonight this fictional spiritual message is drawing your attention toward it. There is a reason your thoughts have been returning to the same person. There is a reason certain memories have been rising without warning, and there is a reason your heart has felt a strange pull that you could not fully explain. Your soulmate is trying to reach you right now, but the most important part is not simply that they want contact. It is what they have finally become ready to tell you. Something has changed inside them, and the truth they have been carrying may be very different from what you imagined during the silence. For a long time, there has been a distance between what they felt and what they were willing to say. You may have sensed it. There were moments when their actions seemed to contradict their emotions, moments when they appeared close and then suddenly pulled away, moments when you wondered whether you had misunderstood the entire connection. Yet what looked like indifference may have been hesitation. What looked like silence may have been an internal battle. What looked like someone moving on without you may actually have been someone trying desperately to understand why they could not move on at all. And now, something has reached a turning point. The walls they built around their emotions are beginning to crack, not because someone forced them down, but because carrying what they feel has become heavier than telling the truth. There was a moment recently when your soulmate found themselves alone with their thoughts. Nothing dramatic may have been happening around them. There may have been no argument, no major event, no obvious sign that anything had changed. But inside them, everything was changing. A memory of you came back with unusual clarity. Perhaps it was something you once said. Perhaps it was a look you gave them when they were struggling. Perhaps it was the way you understood something about them that others never seemed to notice. Whatever the memory was, it did not pass quickly. It stayed. It opened a door they had been trying to keep closed. And behind that door was a truth they could no longer ignore. They realized they had been measuring this connection by the wrong things. They had been looking at timing, circumstances, fear, uncertainty, expectations, and all the complicated details surrounding the two of you. But suddenly, in that quiet moment, another question became louder than all the others: why does this person still matter to me after everything? That question shook something loose inside them. Because the answer was not simple, and it was not comfortable. You still matter because what they felt was never as temporary as they tried to convince themselves it was. This is where the story becomes deeper, because your soulmate is not simply missing you. Missing someone can happen out of loneliness. It can happen because of habit. It can happen because the mind romanticizes the past. But this feels different to them. They are beginning to understand that they are not only remembering you, they are remembering who they were when you were present in their life. They are remembering the version of themselves that felt more open, more seen, more emotionally awake. And that realization has created a question they can no longer escape: what if I walked away from something I was supposed to understand more deeply? That question has followed them into quiet hours. It has appeared when they least expected it. They may have tried to distract themselves. They may have filled their schedule, spoken to other people, buried themselves in responsibilities, or told themselves they needed to be practical. But every distraction eventually became quiet, and when the noise faded, the same feeling returned. You. Not as an obsession, not as a fantasy, but as an unfinished emotional truth. Something between you still feels incomplete to them, and now they are beginning to believe that avoiding it will not make it disappear. There is something important they want you to know, but they are struggling with how to say it. This is not because the message is cruel. It is not because they want to hurt you. It is because what they want to say requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is often most difficult when someone truly cares about the outcome. Your soulmate is afraid that too much time has passed. They are afraid you may have changed. They are afraid you may no longer want to hear what they once could not say. And more than anything, they are afraid that their silence may have taught you to stop expecting anything from them. Yet this fear is also what is pushing them forward. Something inside them is whispering that waiting longer may create the very ending they have been trying not to face. They are beginning to understand that there are moments in life when silence protects you, and other moments when silence costs you something precious. They are reaching the second kind of moment now. And that is why the energy around this connection feels different. They are no longer only asking themselves what might happen if they speak. They are asking what might happen if they never do. There was another moment, subtle but powerful, when they imagined you truly moving forward without them. Not pretending to move on. Not trying to make them jealous. Not waiting somewhere in the background. They imagined you genuinely becoming emotionally free of them. They imagined you laughing with someone who does not confuse you. They imagined you building memories with someone who chooses you clearly. They imagined your heart becoming peaceful in a life where their name no longer carries the same weight. And something about that image affected them more deeply than they expected. It was not possession they felt. It was recognition. They suddenly recognized the consequence of remaining passive. They saw that love, connection, and emotional bonds cannot survive forever on unspoken intentions. They understood that you deserve clarity, even if clarity changes everything. And in that realization, their fear began transforming into courage. Slowly. Imperfectly. But genuinely. Your soulmate has been rehearsing words they have not yet said. They may have typed something and deleted it. They may have opened a conversation and closed it again. They may have imagined hearing your voice and wondered whether they would even know where to begin. In their mind, they have started the conversation many times. Sometimes they begin with an apology. Sometimes they begin by admitting they have been thinking about you. Sometimes they begin by pretending the message is casual, only to realize there is nothing casual about what they truly want to say. But every version eventually reaches the same truth. They want you to know that the connection mattered more than they showed. They want you to know that some of their distance came from fear rather than absence of feeling. They want you to understand that they have been confronting parts of themselves they once avoided. And there is one confession hidden beneath all the others that they are still gathering the courage to bring into the light. The confession is not simply, "I miss you." It goes deeper. They are beginning to understand that you changed something in them. Your presence challenged them to look at emotional places they would rather have ignored. You reflected their fears back to them without even trying. You made them aware of the gap between what they said they wanted and what they were actually brave enough to receive. And for a time, instead of facing that truth, they may have blamed the intensity of the connection itself. They may have told themselves it was too complicated, too uncertain, too emotional, too difficult to explain. But now they are seeing that the complication was not always between you. Much of it was inside them. They were afraid of what would happen if they allowed someone to matter deeply. They were afraid of losing control. They were afraid of disappointment. They were afraid of making a promise they might fail to keep. So they held back, believing distance would protect them. Instead, the distance taught them something they never expected. It taught them that protecting the heart from pain can also protect it from joy. It taught them that avoiding a meaningful connection does not always create peace. Sometimes it creates a quiet ache that follows you from room to room, conversation to conversation, season to season. And that ache has become their teacher. You may wonder why this realization is happening now. Why not earlier? Why did they need so much time? Why did you have to sit with questions they could have answered? Those questions are valid within this story, and there is something important for you to understand. Their awakening does not erase what you experienced. Your confusion mattered. Your disappointment mattered. The moments when you felt unseen mattered. This message is not asking you to forget your own emotional truth simply because they are now waking up to theirs. In fact, this is part of what they are beginning to recognize. They are no longer viewing the story only through their own fear. They are starting to imagine what their silence felt like from your side. That realization has humbled them. It has forced them to confront the possibility that while they were trying to protect themselves, they may have unintentionally made you feel unimportant. And that thought has been difficult for them to carry. There is a particular memory they keep returning to. It was a moment when you offered something emotionally real, perhaps patience, kindness, honesty, or understanding. At the time, they may not have responded the way you hoped. Maybe they became quiet. Maybe they changed the subject. Maybe they acted as though it meant less than it did. But now, looking back, they understand what you were offering. And they know they did not fully meet you there. That memory has become a kind of mirror. It has shown them the difference between how deeply they felt and how little they communicated. It has shown them that someone cannot be expected to read a heart that refuses to speak. And slowly, this awareness is changing the way they think about reaching you. But there is still something holding them at the edge. They do not know what version of you will answer. They remember who you were when the connection felt alive, but they know time changes people. They know silence changes people too. They wonder if you have become stronger in ways they have not witnessed. They wonder if your boundaries are different now. They wonder if you would even believe them if they finally told you the truth. And strangely, these questions are not stopping them anymore. They are making the need for honesty feel more urgent. Because they are realizing that your response cannot be controlled. All they can control is whether they finally show up honestly. That is a major shift. For so long, They may have waited for a perfect sign, a perfect moment, a perfect guarantee that everything would go the way they wanted. But relationships do not offer guarantees. Emotional truth does not arrive with a contract promising you will never be hurt. Courage is not the absence of uncertainty. Courage is deciding that what needs to be said matters more than the fear of how it might be received. Your soulmate is beginning to reach that place. And somewhere inside them, a sentence has formed. It is a sentence they have not yet fully spoken aloud. It carries everything they have been avoiding. It is the reason their thoughts keep circling back to you. It is the reason they feel pulled toward communication. It is the reason this moment feels different from all the times before when they almost reached out and then stopped. The sentence is connected to a choice. That choice has been developing quietly. They have been observing their own life with new eyes. They have looked at the people around them, the conversations they have, the plans they make, the routines they follow. From the outside, everything may appear normal. But something inside has become impossible to ignore. They have realized that going through the motions is not the same as feeling fulfilled. They can laugh and still feel the absence of a certain kind of connection. They can stay busy and still notice that something meaningful is missing. They can surround themselves with people and still remember the one person with whom certain silences never felt empty. You. And this is where the message becomes more personal. There is something about the way you saw them that they have struggled to find elsewhere. You may have noticed the parts of them they usually hid behind humor, confidence, distance, or independence. You may have understood when they were overwhelmed without forcing them to explain. You may have believed in something inside them before they fully believed in it themselves. At the time, that depth may have frightened them. Now they miss it. They miss being understood without performing. They miss the emotional honesty that existed beneath the surface. They miss the sense that someone could see beyond their defenses and still remain present. And there is another truth. They have been comparing connections. Not necessarily people in a shallow way, but feelings. They have noticed how different interactions affect them. They have noticed the difference between attention and understanding, between chemistry and emotional safety, between someone being present and someone truly seeing them. And each comparison has quietly returned them to the same realization. What they shared with you carried a depth they underestimated. This does not mean the past was perfect. It does not mean every issue disappears. It does not mean you are required to reopen a door just because someone finally understands its value. But it does mean something real has shifted inside them, and they feel compelled to tell you. The message they want to send is becoming clearer. They want to say that they are sorry for the moments when fear made them inconsistent. They want to say that they should have communicated instead of leaving you to guess. They want to admit that you were not imagining the connection. They felt it too. Those words are difficult for them because they expose everything. Once spoken, they cannot pretend anymore. Once spoken, they have to accept whatever comes next. And yet the strange thing is, they are beginning to feel more afraid of never saying them than of what might happen if they do. This is why the atmosphere of this story feels as though something is approaching. Not because destiny is forcing two people together, but because truth has a way of creating movement. When a person becomes tired of hiding from what they feel, something eventually has to change. Either they speak, or the silence becomes its own answer. Your soulmate does not want silence to be the final answer. There is also something they have recently understood about you. They have realized that you may have interpreted their distance as rejection. This realization hit them harder than they expected. Because in their mind, the story was always more complicated. They thought their hesitation was obvious. They thought you might somehow understand that they were confused rather than uncaring. But now they see how unfair that assumption was. You could not see every thought inside their head. You could only respond to what they showed you. And what they showed you may have looked like absence. They regret that. Not with dramatic self-punishment, but with a growing desire to take responsibility. This is important, because before, they may have focused on circumstances, timing, other people, pressure, misunderstandings, their past, your reactions, the distance between you. But something has changed. They are beginning to ask a more mature question: what could I have done differently? That question is transforming them. Because once a person stops searching for someone else to blame, they become capable of change. And your soulmate is standing at the edge of that change now. There is a conversation they want to have with you that is not about recreating the past exactly as it was. That surprised even them. They are not dreaming of simply rewinding time. They know too much has happened. You have both changed. Instead, they are imagining whether something new could be built from honesty, something slower, something clearer, something where neither person has to guess what the other feels. This vision has been growing inside them. They imagine sitting across from you, not trying to impress you, not defending themselves, not hiding behind clever words. They imagine finally answering the questions they once avoided. They imagine listening to what the experience was like for you, even if some of it is difficult to hear. And there is one question they desperately want to ask. They want to know whether there is still any part of your heart that believes the story between you is unfinished. They are afraid to ask because the answer matters. But they need to know. Not so they can pressure you. Not so they can claim something that belongs to you. They need to know because they are finally ready to stop living inside assumptions. There is strength in that readiness. And there is strength required from you too. Because if they do reach out, the message is not asking you to abandon your discernment. You are allowed to listen without immediately deciding. You are allowed to hear their truth without forgetting your own. You are allowed to feel something and still move carefully. Real connection does not require you to betray yourself. If what comes toward you is genuine, it will not fear your boundaries. It will not demand that you forget what happened. It will be willing to meet the stronger, wiser version of you that emerged through everything you survived emotionally. And this is another thing your soulmate is beginning to understand. You are not standing where they left you. You have grown. They can feel it, even from a distance. Something about your energy has changed in their mind. They no longer imagine you simply waiting. They sense that you are becoming more centered, more selective, less willing to chase explanations from people who refuse to communicate. That shift has awakened respect in them. And perhaps a little urgency. Because people sometimes recognize the value of access when they realize it is no longer guaranteed. Your soulmate knows they cannot return with the same habits and expect the same openness from you. They know words alone may not be enough. That is why what they are considering goes beyond a message. There is an action attached to it. And this is the part they have told almost no one. They have been thinking about taking a step that would make their intentions unmistakable. Not dramatic. Not reckless. Something simple but meaningful. A real conversation. A real apology. A real attempt to clear what has been left unresolved. They are tired of communicating through hints, silence, imagined scenarios, or half-finished sentences. They want clarity. But before they can give it, they have to face something inside themselves that they have avoided for a long time. They have to admit why they pulled away. And the reason may surprise you. It was not only fear of commitment. It was not only timing. It was not only outside pressure. Part of them believed you could see through them too clearly. You saw strengths they had not claimed. You saw wounds they had hidden. You saw potential they were not yet living up to. And being loved by someone who sees you clearly can feel terrifying when you are still trying to hide from yourself. Your soulmate did not know how to receive that kind of emotional mirror. So they created distance. But distance did not remove the reflection. It only gave them more time to look at it. Now, after everything, they are beginning to understand what your presence was trying to teach them. Not that they were incomplete without you. But that real connection asks people to become more honest with themselves. That is the lesson they are finally learning. And now they want to tell you something they once could not admit. There were moments they nearly reached out before. More than once. Perhaps much more often than you would guess. A song brought you to mind. A place reminded them of you. They saw something they knew would have made you laugh. They experienced a difficult day and instinctively wanted to tell you about it. Their hand almost moved toward the message. Then fear returned. What if you ignored them? What if you were angry? What if reopening the conversation made everything more painful? So they stopped. Again and again. But each unfinished attempt left something behind. Regret. And regret has been accumulating. Now it has become heavier than the fear. This is why the next attempt may be different. They are reaching a point where they would rather know the truth than keep living inside uncertainty. And there is something else. Someone close to them may have noticed the change. A friend, relative, or trusted person may have seen them become quiet when your name or something related to you came up. They may have asked a simple question. Do you still care? Your soulmate may not have answered immediately. But their silence answered more than words could. Eventually, they admitted something. Not everything. Just enough. They admitted they still think about you. They admitted there are things they wish they had done differently. And that conversation planted another seed. The person listening did not tell them what decision to make. They simply challenged them with a question. If it matters this much, why are you still hiding? That question stayed. It followed them after the conversation ended. Because there was no good answer anymore. Fear had been a reason once. Now it was becoming an excuse. And your soulmate knows the difference. This is where the shift accelerated. They began imagining not only what they wanted to say, but what kind of person they wanted to be when they said it. Someone accountable. Someone honest. Someone willing to accept consequences. Someone who does not disappear when emotions become difficult. That is a bigger transformation than a romantic message. It is the beginning of emotional maturity. And whether the two of you ultimately reconnect or not, this truth matters because you played a role in awakening it. Your presence left an imprint. Perhaps that is what they most want you to know. You mattered. More than their behavior showed. More than the silence suggested. More than you may have allowed yourself to believe. But now the story is approaching a moment where feelings alone are no longer enough. Something has to happen. Your soulmate knows this. And in the quiet of their thoughts, they have made a private decision. They have decided that the next time courage rises, they do not want to silence it. They want to follow it. They want to reach toward you. They want to tell you the truth. Yet there is one detail they are still unsure whether they should reveal immediately. It involves a choice they made during the time you were apart. A choice that changed the way they understood this connection. At first, they thought that choice would help them close the chapter. Instead, it did the opposite. It made them realize what they had been trying so hard not to admit. And now that realization sits at the center of the message they want to send you. If they tell you, everything between you may look different. You may finally understand the silence. You may understand why they disappeared into themselves. You may understand why they kept looking back even while trying to move forward. But there is one more thing. Before they reveal that choice, they need to confess what happened the moment they realized they might actually lose you for good. Because that was the moment everything changed. They were confronted with something they had not prepared for. Something they saw, heard, or learned made them believe your life might be moving in a new direction without them. And when that realization landed, they did something completely unexpected. They made a decision in that moment that they had been avoiding for far too long. But the decision itself is not the biggest revelation. The biggest revelation is what they quietly promised themselves immediately afterward. And if you knew what that promise was, you would finally understand why they are trying to reach you now.